stakeholders of the transport industry, the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Transport, and I have the following to say. Over the past few weeks, many families, businesses, farmers, and transport operators have felt the pain of rising fuel prices. I fully understand the frustration and the burden this has placed on households and on the cost of living across the country. As President, I want to speak to you honestly and directly about why this is happening, what the government is doing, and why we must face this challenge together as one nation. The truth is this: Kenya is facing the effects of global fuel crisis caused by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. This is not a crisis affecting Kenya alone. Countries across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas are all struggling with rising fuel prices, fuel shortages, and disruptions in supply. Since the conflict involving Iran escalated on the 28th of February 2026, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil supply routes, through which nearly 1/5 or 20% of global oil passes every day, has experienced major disruption. This has created one of the largest global oil supply shocks in modern history. Within just weeks, global fuel prices rose sharply, with increases and prices increasing by 54% for super petrol, 118% for diesel, and 126.4% for kerosene. These increases directly affect the landed cost of fuel imported into Kenya and ultimately impacted pump prices across the country. The World Bank now projects that global energy prices will rise by 24% in 2026 alone, while the International Energy Agency has warned that global market may remain undersupplied until late 2026 or beyond. Fellow citizens, this is not a Kenyan problem alone. Around the world, governments are introducing emergency measures to manage rising fuel costs, supply disruptions, and pressure on the cost of living. Some countries are now experiencing actual fuel shortages and rationing. Others have encouraged citizens to work from home in order to reduce fuel consumption, while some have reduced working days. Our priority as government has therefore been twofold. First, to ensure that Kenya continues receiving stable fuel supplies across the country. And secondly, to cushion Kenyans as much as possible from the full impact of this global crisis. Kenya imports all its fuel from the Gulf region. Therefore, when global oil prices rise, the impact inevitably reaches us here at home. The current fuel prices reflect the global reality. We recognize that these increases are painful and carry serious consequences for transport costs, food production, business operations, and the overall cost of living. I know that for many Kenyans, rising fuel prices are not just numbers at the pump. They reflect everyday life. They mean higher matatu fares, a farmer paying more for transport of their produce to the market, a border rider worried about their daily earnings, a parent struggling to stretch their family budget, and a business fighting to remain afloat while protecting jobs. The government of Kenya has not stood by. We have undertaken several consequential interventions. First, through forward planning, using the Petroleum Development Levy and Fund, we have built strategic financial reserves to help stabilize the market during times such as this, without disrupting the broader economy as has happened in the past. To cushion consumers from the sharp rise in global oil prices, the government has used the Petroleum Development Fund to stabilize fuel prices. In the last two pricing cycles alone, that is April, May, and May-June 2026, the government has utilized 13.7 billion to cushion consumers. Secondly, working with Parliament, we have reduced VAT on petroleum products from 16% to 8%, foregoing Kenya shillings 14.4 billion in tax revenue in order to reduce pressure on Kenyan families and businesses. In the April-May 2026 pricing cycle, the government utilized Kenya shilling 6 billion in fuel stabilization and also forwent 6.41 billion in VAT revenue. In total, the government spent 12.45 billion on stabilizing during that cycle. That is April-May. We have spent a total of 12.45 billion to stabilize fuel prices. Because of this intervention, super petrol prices were reduced by 19 shillings and 67 cents, diesel reduced by Kenya shillings 40.25 per litre, and kerosene was reduced by Kenya shillings 115 per litre. Similarly, during the May-June 2026 pricing cycle, the government utilized another 7.7 billion for stabilization and forwent 8 billion shillings in VAT revenue. In total, during the current cycle, the government has spent 15.72 billion on stabilization for this month of May-June. As a result, super petrol prices were reduced by 15.87 shillings per litre, diesel reduced by 44.89 shillings per litre, and kerosene reduced by 78 shillings per litre. Just for context, without government intervention during this cycle, super petrol would today have retailed at Kenya shillings 230 shillings per litre instead of the 214. Diesel would be retailing at 277.75 shillings per litre instead of the current 232.86 shillings per litre. And kerosene would have retailed at 270 shillings per litre instead of the current 191 shillings per litre. Taken together, across April, May, and May-June 2026 pricing cycles, the government has spent a total of 28.19 billion on fuel price support through direct stabilization measures and tax relief interventions. These interventions have protected millions of Kenyans from even more severe economic hardship.